It's definitely Wednesday. I know that for sure. And this is Let's Talk Good Broncos. I don't really know. Bree Mace
Definitely not
did.
good Broncos, Brie. Definitely not good Broncos. I think we can agree it's not talking
Bad
good
Broncos.
Broncos.
It's bad. It's all bad.
Pads. Get the spray bottle out. It was a
They're in the corner with the
showing.
dunce cap.
Yeah.
Everyone turn around. Let's not talk about it. Actually, we're going to talk about it. That's what we're going to do. We're going to start pointing fingers. As you can see, we're in the let's die panic mode. That is going to stay in perpetuity because y'all, 50 points, almost 53. I got to ask to start the show, are you sad that Coach McDaniel didn't go for the field goal to make it an NFL record?
I'm not sad. I mean, I think the Broncos absolutely had it coming. You look at the history of the record. The guy who got to 72 took a last-second timeout to enable his kicker to try to set that record. McDaniel obviously went the exact opposite route and easily could have kicked that field goal if he didn't want to run out the clock. Or even if he did, like he could have just done it on fourth down rather than like kneeing the ball on fourth down, which doesn't run clock or anything. The Broncos had it coming to him, and I that said, I'm very glad he didn't. Because of that little show of mercy, we don't have to see Denver Broncos in the NFL history books for all eternity because that record isn't being broken for a long, long, long time. It's stood since the 50s or the 40s or whatever it was, and it's going to stand for probably 50, 60 more years.
I want to point out, too, that even though they didn't set the record, that was, in terms of points, still the worst performance by a defense in NFL history, even counting a game from 1940, 1950, 1966, because all those teams got either special teams or a defensive touchdown to help them get to 70. Dolphins didn't need any help. They'd scored all 10 of those touchdowns on offense.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think I think the little banner on the bottom here describes exactly how I'm feeling. That was atrocious, man. I don't know what to say. Like it's one of those games where we were talking about it before the show. By halftime it all feels the same. Like I didn't know what was going on. After like 50 points, it was like, yeah, run it up. Let's see if we can get to 100. Yeah, I'm watching the NFL draft highlights. Caleb Williams, Drake May. We're not. I'm not even paying attention to this game anymore.
It feels bad, but I started disassociating. Everything was really funny to me. Just every time it went wrong, I couldn't imagine how it could get worse. It kept getting worse. I was crying, laughing at some point, and I went, "Oh, wait a second! This is my team. This is who I root for on a week-to-week basis." But I just wanted to see how bad it could get. And at 63 points, I said, "70's just right there. They got to go for it." So, unfortunately, that's the game that we have to talk about. We can obviously cover the Bears a little bit, but today, Will Keys, Bree Mace, Zach Seegers, Joey Richards. We wanted to start pointing fingers because someone has to be to blame for the debacle that we witnessed on Sunday in Miami. Guys, I'm going to start it off here, and I'm going to say there's not enough sacrifices in the volcano for this Broncos season to go well at all. Your Denver Broncos are 0-3. Against the Bears could be 0-4, and then you got the Jets. I'm confused by the results of this season so far, and I'm going to say enough of you haven't stepped up to the plate and jumped into the volcano to be sacrificial lambs for some sort of curse reduction for this team. And so I'm just saying, if you want to go ahead and do so, like the stream so you can volunteer as tribute, because I think it's about one person per point. So if you want to rectify this issue, I guarantee you have to do it right now. Also, drop a like if you had Tua on your fantasy team, because that's what I did. I absolutely won that battle. I'm not feeling too bad about it. Guys, let's start up the blame game. Will, I'm going to throw it over to you. Who are you pointing fingers at first?
I mean, I think the obvious one is Vance Joseph. Like he's suspect number one in all of this. I used to think that having 70 points dropped on your defense in one game, remind you, this was not 2 games. This is not over a 3-game stretch. 70 points in one game. I thought that was an immediately fireable offense. And I learned otherwise. And I get that there's more to it, that you don't want to set the precedent of firing a defensive coordinator 3 games into a stint, and the fact that you probably can't find anyone to replace him at this point. But it's hard to believe that in the NFL you can give up 70 points and still have a job the next week.
Yeah. I mean,
it doesn't happen in high school. I played flag football at a young age, and that never happened by flag football games.
Yeah.
70 points is insane. That's hard to do in Madden. Like, and you could be on the pro level. 70 points is crazy. Like, Vance Joseph definitely deserves a ton of blame. I think the defense has regressed a ton just talent-wise, but at the end of the day, like, these are still NFL players. Like,
Right.
and we're talking about, like, the defense regressed, but I'm going to keep saying it. 70 points is insane. Will, you started up the show. It's the worst the defense has ever played. And that falls on defensive coordinator. He's the one. And it goes further than just him calling the plays. It felt like the Broncos defense gave up after the first quarter. They weren't even trying.
Yeah, it's bad defensive coordinating. I mean, if we're talking about how much we're blaming Vance Joseph for this mess, though, it's like I don't know. For me, it's like a 5 out of 10. I think for me, maybe a 6, 7 out of 10. I think he deserves a moderate amount of blame, but I saw a comment a while back in the scroll. Don't look for it, Bree. It's long gone now. But someone commented, the players deserve the blame for allowing 70 points. They're the one playing in the game. And frankly, I agree with that. I see another super chat coming in right now saying the second time since Christmas this team quit. And Joey's point about the team quitting, I think, is apt. This team quit and phoned it in. But you know what? 90% of these guys were on the team that quit, 4 games ago, however you want to count it, against the Rams on Christmas Day. Sean Payton weren't part of that staff. Vance Joseph wasn't part of that staff. It was Ejiro Evero, a guy who I think everyone in Broncos country thinks is a top 10 defensive coordinator in the league. If these guys were quitting under Ejiro Evero, is the problem real, and allowing 50 burgers to Baker Mayfield under Ejiro Evero, is the problem really coaching? And does coaching really deserve the lion's share of the blame? Or is it the same players? I think it's the same players.
I don't think there's a boogeyman that you can specifically pinpoint and say this is 100% on that person. We knew Vance Joseph was going to get the lion's share of the blame. There was going to be a scapegoating effect here. And I love that Bill Hart brought up this point because it's one of the most embarrassing games that I witnessed. I thought Christmas 22 was bad. This was it was apparent that the players had given up. So I'm a little bit frustrated here with that. But I wanted to pose to you guys a little bit that if you had to dictate, if someone asked you, they sat you down and they said, you know what, Will, tell me how a team would score 70 points against a current NFL team, a current NFL defense. How would you even go about explaining that? Because it wouldn't just be defensive coordinating. It wouldn't just be players. It would be as though an asteroid came crashing to Earth to make this game a very one-sided affair. To me, it almost seems inexplicable.
Yeah, I mean, to Zach's point, the players were awful, and I think the stat that shows that the most is the 24 missed tackles. They missed 24 tackles. I think a lot of them on the same play. That little like flare out to Raheem Mostert, that might have been 8 broken tackles on one play. But for reference, and I looked this up this morning, the Broncos offense has combined to force 7 missed tackles all season. Javonte Williams has 4 of those, and a few of the receivers combined for 3. But that just goes to show that 24 missed tackles in a game is an anomaly, and it's how you give up 70 points. It really is. It's the only way, I think.
Right. I mean, at the beginning of the year, Bree, I would have said that you give up 70 points if you're the Arizona Cardinals, and they're good. So it just shows how much I know what I'm talking about. Meanwhile, the Broncos, who had a pretty good defense last year, are giving up 70 points. I don't know. I would have to imagine that turnovers were involved, and they were involved. That would have to be part of it. Some stuff like that. So I don't know. It's not fully – well, no, it's fully on the defense. I'm not even going to give them a pass. It's on the defense, yeah.
Yeah, to me, I think yes, it's on the defense, and I think the tackling point is a great one. It's bad coaching. It takes a lot of things for this to happen at the NFL level. But to Joey's point earlier, we don't see 70 points happen much at high school, at Pee Wee, at college level. But when it does happen, what is the common through line? A ridiculous difference in talent level. 3 times in this season. I think it's happened more, but that I can easily find. I find 3 examples of a Division I college football team scoring 70 points in a game so far this season. Oregon did it to Portland State, a FBS school against an FCS team. Oklahoma did it to Arkansas State. Ole Miss did it to Mercer. That last one being another FBS versus FCS. If you're going to drop 70 on a team, there has to be a ridiculous talent disadvantage. And I think, again, that's what we saw.
No running clock also helped the NFL team almost break the records there. So we got that going for us. Matthew Hinton says, it almost feels like the defense is still bitter after being wasted last year. Like they don't care because last year's effort wasn't rewarded. I'm seeing a lot of conversation in the chat about what players specifically gave up. I think it was apparent across the board, but guys, can you isolate or highlight a player in which you thought the effort wasn't there?
No, I can't because it was all of the defense. I'm just blaming the defense.
Okay.
It's hard for me to be like, it's just this one singular dude. I thought it was the whole unit.
I think it was all of it, but only one of them had a clip go viral, you know, and that was Kareem Jackson. So, like, I do think I'm sorry, Bree. I know you're a Kareem Jackson fan. That play was a bad look. I don't even blame him for the first touchdown. That was a busted coverage by Delarrin Turner-Yell. And I'm not surprised that at age 34 or whatever, Kareem Jackson isn't chasing Tyreek Hill down from behind. Don't blame him for that one. But the goal line stand play was, hey, no one's chasing down Tyreek Hill. That's not even a shot. But man, the last effort on the goal line play was bad.
All right. Okay. That's fair. We'll move on from highlighting specific players because I do agree with you, Joey. There's a lot to be blamed on the defense as an entire front. But Joey, please give me who you're pointing fingers at for Sunday's not immaculate reception.
I think it has to be I mean, Zach, you've mentioned so much about the talent on the roster. And
do it, Joey. Do it from the top rope. Go.
It has to be the man that put the talent together, and that's George Paton. That's my blame right now as the general manager. I mean, you're looking at it. I see a lot of excuses where it's like, hey, how is he supposed to build a competent roster when you don't ever have any early draft picks? But, I mean, he's the one that traded for Russell Wilson. And then also the Broncos had to trade a first-round pick for Sean Payton because his last hire was really bad. So both of those are reasons as to why the roster is bad. I totally agree. But, I mean, I even like free agency. The Broncos spent a lot of money on their defensive line and a lot of draft picks. Nick Bonito, Randy Gregory, Zach Allen. These are guys that have either been drafted early or signed for big paydays. And I think the Broncos probably have the worst defensive line in the league right now. So it's hard for me to give them a pass when I see assets going into the defense. I forget exactly the stat, but it's something like 70% of the draft picks have been towards the defensive side of the ball, yet they're still giving up 70 points in a game. So I'm gonna put the blame on George Paton. I think it's really not looking good for him.
I mean, you didn't even mention too that he didn't give Mike McDaniel an interview.
Yeah,
last offseason,
exactly,
or 2 off seasons ago. The guy who just hung 70 points on you was the former Broncos ball boy and intern in 2005.
We got to talk about that a little bit because I think it's a little bit fascinating that all of Broncos country isn't ripping and roaring about that fact.
Yeah.
Because he is a little bit of an offensive genius. What we've been looking for to kind of find a change of pace. You're going to take one of the youngest minds, but one of the strongest minds, aside from Kyle Shanahan, and not even give him an opportunity. It makes the last couple of years look like a pure dumpster fire. Zach, go ahead.
Yeah, and people knew he was good. Like, it's not even as bad as he didn't interview him. Like, it's far, far worse. We're talking about back during that cycle. If you remember, it was like Hackett or Dan Quinn. Which is it going to be? Dan Quinn, the part of the big pitch through Denver Broncos insiders for Dan Quinn was, hey, if you hire Dan Quinn, he's going to bring along Mike McDaniel to be his OC. And that would be so, guys, Mike McDaniel's an offensive genius and you can have him as your OC. And some people in Broncos country were at the time smart enough to go, I'll say I was one of them, to go, if that's the pitch, why not make Mike McDaniel the head coach? rather than hire him to be OC for a year and then he get poached elsewhere. It wouldn't have even been an option because, of course, he got hired to be the Dolphins head coach that offseason. But George Paton was aware that this guy was a very smart offensive mind. It wasn't under the radar for him. He just went, no, I want my buddy to be the head coach. He can be the OC. George Paton is terrible at his job, people, and it's time we accept that. The 2021 draft is very, very good, and I'm glad it happened. Everything beyond then has been a tire fire. You know what stifles player development? When you're constantly changing coaching staffs. Why has that been happening? George Paton, he decided to bring Vic Fangio back for a lame duck year when everyone knew he was going to fire him immediately after the completion of that season. He was the one who hired Nathaniel Hackett, one of the worst head coaching hires of the last 40 years. And he's the one who traded the first round pick for Sean Payton, which I think is one of the very few good moves he's made. But no one's forcing him to trade high draft picks other than this guy. And how bad is this roster? It's so bad. They just got 70 points dropped on him, folks. 3 rookies. And again, he's traded 5 top 50 picks. If you're hitting 60% on those picks, you are like a Hall of Fame caliber GM, which George Paton isn't. If he hit 60% there and you add 3 top 50 players to this roster, they're still not there. This is an 0-3 team that just got 70 dropped on it. This disrepair is George Paton's fault, and you aren't a few trades away from that being different.
Go off.
I'm here for it. I could keep going. It's bad. Any way you want to slice it. I mean, part of the evaluation with the Russell Wilson trade is that Russell Wilson is going to be an elite quarterback that's, 1, worth the ridiculous contract he gave him, and 2, that can make up for the roster deficiencies caused by trading draft picks. The fact that trading draft picks makes your roster worse isn't news. You have to plan for that. That's part of the logic when you make the trade. Yeah. Russell Wilson hasn't been close to the type of player that's going to make up for that, even though he is playing much better this year. Disaster GM.
But we make the comparison, right? And I think what people are getting frustrated about is that there's still blame being put towards Russell Wilson. The appreciable difference from 2022 to 2023 has been apparent, and it's been I would say it's almost been remarkable, right? It's what you maybe wanted to see to start his career and tenure here in Denver, but it's not enough. And to say that it's good quarterbacking is probably a little bit too much. However, it's not bad, and it's not the lead contributing factor. But when the team scores 13 points, where's the question mark on that? Is that a line thing? Is that a Sean Payton thing? Is that a Russell Wilson thing? Where are you pointing the finger for the lack of points? And I know the first 2 games are going to give you a little bit of a swayed opinion here. It's a small sample size, but what do you say to those who are pointing the finger still at the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it feels like they're still working out some kinks on offense, but I see life in the offense, which makes me excited. Like if I go take away a PI that was just BS in the end zone, I thought it was a terrible call from the refs. There's another touchdown. There were 2 fumbles Cortland Sutton had where the Broncos were driving, and they looked like there was a lot of life in those drives. You know, there were plenty of opportunities for the Broncos to maximize and score a ton more points than what they did. Just mistakes took them out of it, whether it be a flag or whatever the case may be. But the offense still, to me, looks a lot better than it did last year. Even this last game, I thought so. I thought it looked like it had life, and I thought it was, I don't know, like with more time and experience under Sean Payton, it's going to continue to look better. That was my observation from the offense after that last game. Do they deserve blame? Yes, because they did only score however many points, but I'm just kind of looking at it comparative to the defense, where it's like, you guys have shown me nothing. And then I'm looking at the offense and I'm being like, okay, there's signs of life there. Like, I think that this might work out. So definitely I wouldn't put the majority of the blame on the offense whatsoever.
Yeah. I would actually put some of the blame on the defense for making the offense look worse.
Yeah.
Go Will.
What are you supposed to do? They talked about it all offseason. They want to run the ball. Well, what happens when you're down 35 to, I don't know what the score was at halftime, but the Dolphins had 35. You can't run the ball. You just can't. You have to drop back and pass, 3 out of every 4 plays. So when your defense sabotages the offense, I think they deserve a lot of blame for that.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. This offense's game wants to be, we're going to punch you in the mouth and then we're going to throw bombs over your head. And I think it's hard to play that style when the other team has you in like a 14-point hole 3 minutes into the game. It like immediately you're in a negative game script, and that's not the way this offense wants to play. I think the more concerning part of the offense is like going into that hole up 21-3. That concerns, because I'm like, that's the type of game script that should be playing right into your hand. What happened in week 2 in like the second half with the offense? That concerns me far more than what I think we saw against Miami. To Will's point, I think Russell Wilson is playing pretty dang well this year. I think what Sean Payton has done to the offense, like, I know this Broncos season is looking terrible and they're 0-3, but you hired Sean Payton in part to save the offense, and so far he's saving the offense. They entered week 3 scoring, points per drive at a top 3 rate in the NFL, scoring touchdowns on a higher percentage of their drive than any other drives than any other defense or offense in the league. Rather, it's a very well-designed attack, and the talent's not there. You look at the receiving core, you look at the offensive line, and how they're not living up to their billing. Yet they're producing like any of the best offenses in the league. So I do think that should be very promising. For me, I look at the Broncos and the quarterback thing with Russell Wilson. I see some Russ jabbing back and forth in the comments. And I think of like the rug in Big Lebowski. It's like you wanted the rug that would tie the whole room together. And that's what the Broncos have been looking for at quarterback for so long. They needed the quarterback that would put the whole room together. This season, I feel like they finally got the rug and they finally got back to their apartment, and it's just burned down. It's just a smoldering pile of ash and ruin. And it's like, okay, well, you got the rug, but none of the other things that you thought you were going to surround that rug with. It's a tire fire.
Okay, fair. But if you're throwing for 306 yards and you get one total touchdown out of there, I think there's a little bit of a bigger umbrella. No, Zach, you were talking. Hold on. Wait a damn minute. Let's talk about it. Because if Russell Wilson isn't getting the job done there in 306 air yards, what's the issue? But I want to use this to bounce off of a point, and you can say whatever you want to say because I know you're going to do so anyways. But if Sean Payton is not to blame for the majority of the issues here, as he was brought in, hand selected the staff, made the decisions, worked alongside George Payton this year's draft, a lot of that falls squarely on his shoulders, and he can be the sole boogeyman that everybody wants to blame. But everyone's a little bit too busy being wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, and hard-eyed over the ability to script a first half of football. So go ahead, Zach. Give it to me.
I mean, I don't think it's just the first half. Again, all those rates I had mentioned about them producing like a top 3 offense entering week 3 are full game long stats, not just resided to the first half. So the offense is producing at an elite level. I think that's the thing. As for, well, why is Russell Wilson able to move the ball, but points aren't happening? Well, I'd point to turnovers, and those turnovers against Miami were not on Russell Wilson. It was on the surroundings. I also don't think Russell Wilson is playing like some golden messiah. I think he's playing really good. I trust people smarter than me, like our own Robbie Davis and Tim Jenkins, breaking down the film. And they're saying this is not only a good game from Russell Wilson or a good game from orange and blue Russell Wilson, but the very best game we've seen from Russell Wilson in orange and blue. And even if we don't want to go that far, or think they're a little too high on the Russ performance, I do think there's something to be said for that was a pretty good Russ performance, and I think the rest of the offense set them down. Now, as for like generally the offensive shortcomings, I'd point to the lack of talent. Like, I think the fact that they're top 5 or top 10 or whatever in terms of their overall offensive production, I don't think we shouldn't be going, hey, Sean, why isn't it top 5? Why isn't it top 3? I think we should be looking at what's around Russell Wilson, a pretty shaky
Sign
offensive
a free
line,
agent.
practice squad wide receivers. What free agent
Any
are you
kind
trying
of wide receiver
free
you
agent?
can bring in.
Look at the available wide receivers. Who's coming in and starting for this team? Like, who?
Yeah. I don't know. I think that there is some talent on the Broncos offense, and I think that they're producing how they should. I really do. I think the Broncos offense does look good. I think, though, Bree, when you give up 70 points in a football game, yes, Sean Payton did hire Vance Joseph and that he deserves blame for that. I without question, he deserves blame for that. I'm giving all these coaches problems, all the other ones. I'm not giving Sean Payton a pass just because I like Sean Payton and his resume. I think he came in, the offense does look better, so I'm giving him credit there. But at the same time, the defense seems a little ignored. And then when you hire Vance Joseph, what happens? Vance Joseph brings in Zach Allen, and Zach Allen doesn't look too great right now. So you're like adding these issues on top of each other, hiring Vance Joseph. And that definitely is Sean Payton's fault. He could have gone a different way. But Will, I'm interested in your opinion here.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I'm not sure if I'm supposed to blame Sean Payton or give him credit for this, but the Marvin Mims situation.
Yeah.
Because he's been so clearly the best, not even wide receiver, just the best skill position player on this team so far. And I know it's a small sample size, but he's averaging 28 yards per catch. And then you throw in the 45-yard punt return against the Commanders and the 99-yard kickoff return for a touchdown last week against Miami. And then you look at his snap count, and he's just like, he's kind of getting buried still behind Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, who, produced, but also had 2 back-breaking fumbles. And I wonder if Sean Payton's doing the right thing by easing him into the lineup, and that's why he's playing so well, or if it's neglectful to not be playing him, 80% of the snaps. I'm not sure.
I think you gotta start dialing it up until until it's too much for him at this point. It has been so promising. It seems like every time he touches the ball, you're getting an electric play. And absolutely, Sean Payton is deserving of some of the blame. For me, the difference, what differentiates Sean Payton from everyone else in this really messy situation is he deserves credit for what's going right. And I don't know who else to give that credit to, because the offense taking a massive leap forward despite really questionable talent at the receiver room. I know we're gassing up Marvin Mims, but where's Jerry Jeudy been this year? I know some of that's the injury, but he's taken a big step back from where he was a season ago. Cortland Sutton has had a pretty calamitous start to the season. I just look at the weapons he has to work with, the line in terms of its pass protection that he has to work with. And this is a top 10 offense. We saw what Russell Wilson was last year. But frankly, look at what Russell Wilson was in 2021 for Seattle, or the second half of 2020 once teams started playing 2 high defenses against him. He's got Russell Wilson operating quick game effectively. That Russell Wilson hasn't been able to do that for the first 11 years of his career, even when he was elite. And Sean Payton, again, there are warts on that pig, okay? But it's also the only one doing anything right. It's also the only one producing some bacon or whatever for the table.
Good metaphor.
Yeah. Tied it
Thank
together.
you. Except don't slaughter him.
Don't slaughter the pig. Not yet, at least. What's the other option? Wait for who's the top?
Joseph takes over head coaching duties.
My God! Why would you wish that on people? It takes like 120 human sacrifices to undo that. What you just said there, Joseph. I hope you're proud of it. All right,
Coach Lombardi in Denver.
Oh, no.
All right, we blame Sean Payton. We blame Russell Wilson. Not really. Calm down. Vance Joseph, George Payton. I already said that? No, I just said the other Payton. What about the offensive and defensive line? Let's bring it up here. Let's talk about the trenches, boys. Joey, this one's your specialty. Let me have it.
Yeah, I think the offensive line is better than we're giving it credit for, personally, honestly. Like Ben Powers, is he elite? No. Is he fine? Yes. Is McGlinchey elite? No. Is he fine? Yes. Is Garrett Bowles elite? No. Is he fine? Yes. It's not the worst O-line ever. And then Lloyd Cushenberry, I think he's having his best year of his career. I think Quinn Miners is solid. It's an okay group. I don't think it's terrible. Well, the real issue is I said it earlier on the podcast, I think this defensive line is the worst in football. And when I looked at it, when I was evaluating the defensive line before the season, I was sitting there looking at it okay, we might have a tough time getting after the passer, but at least the run defense should be there. That's something that I definitely was thinking. Randy Gregory, big guy, sets a tough edge. And then we could go across it. Mike Purcell's a run guy. Zach Allen's supposed to be a run guy. DJ Jones supposed to be a run guy. These guys are supposed to be in there helping the Broncos defend the run. Yet this year, I mean, how many yards did the Dolphins third string running back get? It was like 70 yards. The third string running back, and then everyone went crazy. You would literally think the rookie running back guy. How do you pronounce his last name, Zach? Devin
A-Chain?
Yeah, I think he clarified it's A-Chan now.
A-Chan, you're right. I heard that on Mina Kimes' show. It's like 4chan.
Devin A-Chan looked like Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
Like it was really, really bad. And the big issue with that was, he's so fast. He is one of the fastest. When he gets downfield, it's scary. He's so fast. So is Mozart. But when you're not stopping them at the line of scrimmage, now they're just running full speed. Nobody touched them 5 yards down the field. It's an issue. So I definitely blame a lot of that on the defensive line for sure.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, you're looking, you lose Deshaun Williams, you don't do anything to replace him. You lose Draymond Jones and you replace him with Zach Allen, who's been woefully ineffective, and it puts you in a really bad spot. I'm trying to find where Jonathan Harris is. Excuse me, he's played like 150 snaps already this season. That's a horrible place to be. And yeah, he's 31st in the NFL in snaps played, sandwiched right between DJ Reader and Javon Hargrave. All right. That's a problem. Like, Javon Hargrave is a guy the 49ers are like, how can we get this guy into the field as much as possible? DJ Reader is a guy the Bengals are like, how can we get this guy into the field as much as possible? And the Broncos are so shallow at the defensive line, they're having to use a practice squad caliber player in that same role.
He's got like 60 more snaps than Jalen Carter on the Eagles.
Yes.
Something's wrong. Something's definitely wrong.
Double. He's played twice as much as Jalen Carter, and we've seen what Jalen, like, that is a testament to the position the Broncos are at on the defensive line. It's a bottom 5 defensive front in the league, maybe even worse than that. It's probably the weakest position group on this team, and we've already talked about how talent poor in general the roster is. So that's a major problem. I do think the offensive line deserves some heat, though. Not because they're like some terrible unit, but I think they're average. Like Joey said, that's a fine unit. They're fine. But they're getting paid elite money. This is the 3rd most expensive line in football this year. And it's kind of the same problem with Russell Wilson ultimately. Like, Russell Wilson's playing like maybe the 12th best quarterback in football. That's good. I'm happy to have statistically, he might even be top 10. The problem is he's going to get paid like the best quarterback in football. And he's probably not, he's getting paid more than Patrick Mahomes. And he's far from being better than Patrick Mahomes. So I just think that's the problem with the offensive line. You're paying, if you look at the 4 most expensive offensive lines in the league, it's the Atlanta Falcons, who maul people. It's the Philadelphia Eagles, who maul people. And then it's the Broncos and Bengals, who are both mediocre, kind of overpaid, and I think somewhat problems towards their team's success.
I do have to point out real quick, though, that it's ultimately, if you're going to go out there and sign offensive linemen like they did Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey this offseason, you're going to have to overpay, because good offensive linemen aren't hitting free agency that often. And when they do, they're going to be top. Like, they're going to be the highest paid at the tackle position. If a top 10 tackle or even a top 15 tackle hits free agency, they're going to be the highest paid tackle after that free agency. So that it's just more reason, hey guys, the Broncos not drafting a tackle for so many years, or ignoring offensive line for so many years during the draft, it hurts you, and you're going to have to overpay in free agency to have a competent unit up there. So
it's the Bengals and Broncos problem. Like, I just listed off those 4 teams. The difference between 2 of those teams and the 2 elite ones and the 2 bad ones are the 2 elite ones have built their lines in-house and then are paying to retain those talents. Mm-hmm. While the Bengals and Broncos went, oh my God, we got a bad offensive line. Throw money at the problem. And they're stuck paying a lot of money for, yes, an upgrade on the offensive line, but what's ultimately an average offensive line.
Okay, sorry, go ahead, Will. No, Will.
I was just going to say really quick. I mean, like, you bring in a guy from Baltimore, like Ben Powers, who, what do they do there? They just run the ball. And Mike McGlinchey from San Francisco, what do? They run the ball. And then I've made this point, but your defense gives up 35 in the first half, and it's like there's no point to running the ball. So it's ultimately just like a total misuse or misallocation, I think, of their talent.
1000%.
Great segue. Talk about a misuse or misallocation of talent. Why the hell is Randy Gregory lined up on Tyreek Hill? Let's talk about the pass rush from the game on Sunday, because I'm confused. A lack of talent, a Swiss cheese of a line, and then you've got some crazy stuff going on edge. Joey, I see you twitching over there. Tell me about it.
Okay. I think so. If you're talking about edge in the pass rush. It's another position like offensive line. If your guys hit free agency, you're going to have to pay a lot because they don't grow on trees. It's a premium position. They're always getting drafted the highest in the draft, edge rushers. And when I'm looking at the Broncos there, now Randy Gregory, they paid him a lot. And I think he just doesn't look like the same guy to me anymore. And it's really disappointing because when he was healthy his whole career, he's always been a really good pass rusher. So I think that is the guy that was supposed to tip this unit in a good direction, and since he's not playing good, it's really bad. Like, he was a big swing factor for me this going into the season, was Randy Gregory and how he was going to look, and if he could stay healthy. He's staying healthy, he's just not producing the same, so it's disappointing. If there is a bright spot, I would say Nick Bonito. He looks pretty good. I don't think he's ever going to be a great run defender, but hey, that's fine because getting after the quarterback is more important. And that's something that he looks improved on. But it's just like not a great unit. You don't have any stud out there, pass rusher. You just really don't. You have a bunch of guys that I would like more as rotational pieces.
Zach, before you reply real quick, I just wanted to preface with something because I wanted to have you add some additional thought process on why pressures versus sacks and why we're seeing, kind of the inability for people to see what is being efficient use of the defense. If you can add that into your response.
Yeah. So one is, maybe the best creator of pressure. That's pretty strong. There's a lot of good blitz designers, but he's in an elite group of pressure creators in the NFL. He's using a lot of simulated pressures. There's a reason. I think that's the cutting thing. Offenses to deal with a simulated pressure. For people that don't know, is you're still bringing 4 people, so it's not technically a blitz, but you're bringing them from blitz position. So you're bringing a cornerback, you're bringing a linebacker, and you're dropping a defensive lineman out in coverage. As a result, it messes with the offensive line, and you can create pressure easily without rushing additional people. The Broncos were so far ahead of everyone else in the league in terms of utilization of that last year. That's come back to the pack a good bit, but it is disappointing to me how poor Vance Joseph has been at scheming up pressures. I talked about it before the season that I was actually kind of optimistic about the Vance Joseph hire. I know I was really wrong, but I was kind of optimistic about it because what I thought he did best was game up pressures. And you looked at, okay, they should have some talent in the secondary. The talent up front's pretty questionable. You need to game up pressures. You need to try and scheme up those attacks. And it just hasn't happened yet. I do think we should note that some of that, at least, is playing Jimmy Garoppolo and Tua Tagovailoa, who's getting rid of the ball faster than. I mean, Tua is number 1 in time to throw in the NFL, and I'm pretty sure Garoppolo's top 5. So that's going to be an issue. But all you need to know about how rough this pass rush is here's a little Zach's question of the day for you. What Denver Bronco is currently leading the team in pass rush win rate? Minimum 15 pass rush snaps. So the bar's low here. Who do you think is leading the team in pass rush win rate?
You wouldn't ask me this unless it was someone obscure. So let me look at the depth chart.
Oh no.
I'll stop the dead air. Mike Purcell.
Oh God!
Mike Purcell is on this roster to play first and second down and clog up run lanes, and I think he's pretty good at it. I think he does a good job. He's a good player. He is not on this roster to rush the passer. He is leading this team in pass rush win rate. He is on this roster, frankly, to not play the pass. Yeah. He is not a passing down player, and he is doing better against the pass than any other member of this front. That's embarrassing. Any of the edge rushers, anyone. That is scary hours.
suffering a little bit of an injury too on Sunday too. That's just going to dig into that even further. Guys, we're done pointing fingers, I think, unless anybody wants to throw one more out there for funsies. I did want to talk a little bit about Let's Talk Broncos. If you like the show, please go on over to our YouTube and subscribe. We're almost to 800. And if we get to 800, I'll cry live on air. You can search us over there on YouTube. Will is so gracious to invite us into his home and talk Broncos with him. Anything else that we need to hit today before I log? I'm no Brandon Perna, so
I think we're good.
all right.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
have
no ads or anything.
All right.
We're
No
free.
ads, no nothing. You got to watch this for free, Broncos country. We'll be live again on Friday over on Let's Talk Broncos. Will and Brandon will be back. What's the next scheduled broadcast?
We'll be picking games tomorrow at some
There
point.
you go.
I don't think
All
we'll be
right, let's
live,
go.
but it'll be on That's Good Broncos.
All right. Let's go, not Bears. We'll see y'all